We'll just change it to snowboarder.
Rolls off the tongue.
You guys, please come on in and take a seat.
We don't bite. We promise.
Yeah. And there's seats up here in the upper right.
Yeah, a whole good chunk.
Yeah. All right, thanks everybody for coming tonight. My name is Alex Hillinger. Can y'all hear me okay? Yeah. I am one of the owners of this gallery, and it's a real honor and privilege to be hosting the Shift Festival event tonight. So I was asked to do a few words about what we're doing with Asymbol, and talk a little bit about the exhibit that's hanging on the walls. So I just want to start off by saying, art has the power to do something very unique in our society, and that is to engage people on an emotional level and create open-ended dialogue, since art has no right or wrong answers. You know, what we're doing with this gallery is introducing people to art. Usually, we're the first real art gallery that our fan base and our customers gets to engage with. And so we have the privilege of having a much younger audience, but along with that, it comes a responsibility to have art and artists who I think are trying to say something important with their art. And so our job becomes sort of the curators of that conversation and that dialogue. I'd like to think that what we're doing with Asymbol is more than just being a gallery, though. At the end of the day, I think we're really a platform for creativity, and especially one that can empower our artists to really push the envelope, both creatively and in terms of what they're really trying to say with their art. And so just a few words around the show that's hanging kind of along this back wall, and some of the pieces kind of scattered around. They're over here, and up in the front are all originals by a Swiss artist named Ayuna Tinta. About a month ago, we had the opening here. The name of the show is the Emergency Exhibit, and it's really pertinent to the Shift Festival that's going on here tonight. Basically, all of these paintings are an interpretation by this artist around climate change. And being Swiss, she grew up in the mountains, and she's really seen a lot of climate change just in the last few years. Where she lives, receding glaciers and snowfields that don't hold snow anymore in the summertime, and it's been alarming for her. But as I start off by saying, art can really create a dialogue emotionally, and so I think that's what she's really tried to do. And so I'd encourage you after the event to kind of take a look around and check out some of her work. It's all on our website as well. So there you go. I'll turn it over to Steve Sullivan.
Thanks very much. Old men need notes. And they actually need their reading glasses, which I forgot. We'll roll with it. Thanks so much tonight for joining us for this panel on skiing and climate change. We have a great crew of people, some very, very old friends and some new friends, and we're very excited to have this panel here tonight. Thanks to Christian, hi Christian, and Cerise and the entire SHIFT team, 4JH, and all the sponsors for their efforts at bringing this here together. This is a great event. We're very excited to participate this year. I didn't introduce myself. I'm Steve Sullivan, founder of Stio. Thanks to Alex and Travis and Ashley for hosting here. I'm a huge fan of Asymbol and was a big supporter of the gallery early on, and I really believe in what these guys are doing, and I think it's fascinating, the combination of the art and the outdoors. And then thanks very much to the panel for being here. We're super happy to participate. We think that SHIFT's mission of helping us all further understand and recognize the convergence of conservation, adventure, and recreation is a really cool and topical and important discussion to have. And we look forward to the next few days of participating in a bunch of the events. And without further ado, let's turn it over to Diana here to moderate the panel. Thank you for coming.
Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. We're thrilled to have you here, and I'm thrilled to be moderating this fantastic panel on skiing, snowboarding, and climate change. My name is Diana Madson. I'm the Executive Director of Pact, and we'll start off by each of our panelists sharing a little bit about their work and their personal engagement in climate change in the context of their work. And I've also asked each of them to, sorry, it's echo hard for you guys again.
Can we just talk?
Yeah.
Is that enough?
I know the recording.
If we use our big kid voices, does it work back there?
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
Big kid.
Sorry.
So I've asked each of them to identify a question of how they want to guide their conversation about this concept of using positions of influence to build a social movement around climate action. And so we're going to go down the line. Everyone's going to share their perspective and talk about their question and answer their question. So we'll start with Angel Collinson. She's a professional big mountain skier, and she was formerly a student at the University of Utah studying environmental law and dropped out to become a climate activist with Protect Our Winters.
Yeah.
That's why you dropped out, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And Angel's question is, how do we create events within the snow sports community where people feel like their voice is being heard and they actively bring something to the table?
So, oh yeah, I don't have a microphone. That's right. Big kid voice. Okay. So I realized I sort of asked a question that I didn't have the answer to. I was thinking we were going to have a conversation, but I started thinking about it a lot. And what I realized with like what Lucas and I do and sort of with these events, I feel like this is a really great example of a successful event. It's in a cool location, there's free alcohol, and it's just the casual, easy vibe I feel like works really well. I've been noticing, like, you know, when I'm asked to go to these events and speak and kind of use my my voice and the persona that I've created to speak at these things, sometimes I feel like our model of events where we get together and try and collectively accomplish something, or I just feel like our event is a little outdated, and I think we need to sort of rethink how we do these events. You know, it's like right now, you know, you're asked, you send out maybe some Facebook invites, and you're asked to come, and then you'll get like a free T-shirt or a hat, or maybe there's a raffle, and sometimes that's successful. But I feel like what's more successful is when you really engage what people care about. And instead of getting together groups and being like, okay, here's what we can do, you know, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and you kind of talk at people, more events, and probably on a smaller basis where it's not sort of what do you get out of this, but what can you give, and what asking people, and I encourage you guys all to do this because I had to do it when I was thinking about it. What is it that you really, really care about on this planet and in life, and what makes you inspired to do something? And to maybe just at a dinner table or at a dinner party or a get-together, just encourage that. Start with that conversation with your friends, and start on small base. Maybe just sit down with a group of kids if you're a coach, or just these small events where you ask people to talk about what they're passionate about, and sort of get more of a community-based discussion where people are giving you and us, where we're all giving each other ideas. Like I was thinking, I've told this story a couple times today, but it's about, and I don't know if it's true or not, but it's a story about this little girl. And I was told to me when I was a little girl, and so that's why I remembered it. But it's the story goes that this semi-truck, got stuck under a bridge in this small town, and it was really wedged in there, and all the people in the community were scratching their heads and trying to figure out how the heck to get this thing out, because it was just real jammed in there. And so they're brainstorming, and they're all trying to figure out this problem, and this little girl comes up and is like, well, why don't you guys just let the air out of the tires? And everybody's like, pfft. And for me, it was really inspiring because I think we all have a really unique voice and unique ideas that we can bring to the table. And I just encourage us all to do that, starting in small communities, and start to think about maybe ways that you want to get together with people that you care about, like whether it's in the snow sports community or something else, and start to have that conversation of what you want to change and how you want to change it amongst yourselves. I came up with this line and I thought it was really awesome, so I wrote it down. But just the idea of passion-based motivation instead of like a fear-based obligation. So it's not like the world is so messed up, all these things are, snow's gonna be gone in 100 years, all these animals are dying, but more like, here's the things that we like and here's the things that we care about, and let's talk. So anyways, I ask you guys to ask that question of what kind of events you would want to be a part of, and maybe just put it in your brains and think about it. So that's what I got.
So next up, we have Lucas Debari. He's a professional freestyle big mountain snowboarder, an athlete with the North Face and with the Protect Our Winters Riders Alliance. Lucas's question is, how can I best optimize my position of influence to tastefully persuade and promote people to take action on preserving our planet? So Lucas.
So, as I've been super fortunate, I've been a professional snowboarder since I was 18, went right out of high school into snowboarding, and that was my world. That is my world, it's my focus. And through these amazing opportunities that I've had via the North Face, Protect Our Winters, I've been super fortunate to travel to some remote places in Antarctica, Greenland, and see firsthand the effects of climate change, which is what brings me, which is why I want to be here tonight with all you people, because it's something that needs to be discussed. And my biggest question is how, as a professional snowboarder, how do I use what influence I have, whether big or small, to tastefully promote people taking action on climate change, and very broad spectrum like that. I feel, I've had the opportunity to say, go to Greenland, we could study the glaciers and prove to people that the glaciers are receding. But in my opinion, there's so many intelligent people out there that have already given us that proof. We need to move beyond this, like, okay, look, climate change is real, like, we get that. And how do we promote people to take action, and what is that action? I think a lot of times with climate change, amongst like people that have a voice of influence, it's very preachy. It's like, hey, you need to do this, or this is what's going on, and it's like, I'm going to be this rock star that tells people how to live, and the kids are going to follow me. And I think similar with what she's saying with the contest or this gathering formula, it's outdated, and we need to be more like by the people, for the people, with the people, and because we are the people. Like, I'm not coming in here as an expert on climate change. I'm coming in here as a professional snowboarder who's been very lucky to have witnessed climate change firsthand, and I don't necessarily have the answer to that question, but I think that it's really important for you to engage with us. Like, hey, I've been trying to tell my friend this for 10 years, and if you said it in this way, they would take it seriously, maybe just because I'm good at snowboarding, but that doesn't matter. The point is that the message is conveyed. Mm-hmm. And something that I'm really focusing on as I'm being involved in more discussions like this is, what is the tasteful way of doing that? And how do I say something to someone that's not going to automatically put them on the defensive reel? Like, hey, yeah, like I do have a big truck, but like I fly around in helicopters. I have no right to talk about my carbon footprint, And I think moving forward, just like Angel's saying, like it needs to be more of this community style event, these community style discussions where you have, Travis, who owns this, is a great person who's extremely personable, and to have someone like that engaging one-on-one with people, and for that one person that you engage with to take that experience back and share it with your friends, like not like, hey, I saw Shaun White on TV and he told me to not to wash my car 5 times a week, It's like that's pointless. But it's like, no, I met with Shaun. He told me how, it was super frustrating, but I don't drive my car to get groceries anymore. I ride the bus, which he never would do. But, you know what I'm saying? Like that engagement, I think, is really important. And I think moving forward, it's our role as professional athletes to promote that message. And like I said, I'm not an expert, and I don't know what the best way of putting that message out there, but that's what I feel like people with a bit of influence moving forward need to be, it's our moral responsibility to be engaging with the public on that.
So if you guys if this sparked any thoughts, or if you have any suggestions, reach out to us on social media. If you have campaigns or things you're interested in, and reach out to us.
Thanks, Lucas. Now we have Chris Steinkamp, the Executive Director of Protect Our Winters.
Hey everybody, thanks Diana. Thank you everyone for coming tonight. Thank you to Alex and Asymbol and Christian for having us. As Diana mentioned, I'm the Executive Director of Protect Our Winters, and we were started in 2007 by a snowboarder, Jeremy Jones, Steve's brother, who had seen climate change firsthand as he traveled around the world. And nothing at that point in 2007 was really being done by the snow sports community to do anything about it. There was this huge gap between what was actually happening in our mountains and the action being taken by all of us to address it. And so something needed to be done. And I think right from the start, we realized that a social movement is what was going to take place. And I think the term social movement is thrown around very casually quite often. And but to us, it's a real thing, because the winter sports community is perfectly poised to create this social movement, not unlike what we're seeing with civil rights in the 60s, or gay rights and equality in marriage. It's something along those lines is what's going to happen, it's going to take to solve climate change. And I think, the snow sports community, a lot of people that don't understand who we are can kind of chalk us off as a group of enthusiasts. But what we really are, we're an extremely big industry, and we're a group of about 30 million skiers and snowboarders in the US. So when you talk about 30 million people, even a fraction of that 30 million people, as a social movement, it's really powerful. And that's what we're trying to do. So I think right from the start, I think this word social movement has always been part of what we're doing. And working with athletes, just because we were started by Jeremy and we kind of gravitated to that direction, has been a focus of ours since day one. And I think the thing about athletes and social movements that's so powerful is that athletes are kind of like the perfect cocktail for starting a social movement. They've got the passion for the cause. They've got passion for the sport. They've got passion for saving the playground or the mountains that we live in. They're seeing it firsthand, which is very rare, especially 5 or 6 years ago. But then they've also got this incredible reach, and that's where the real power comes in, especially when you're talking about social media. We work with about 60 pro athletes, and when you total up all of their, let's just say, social media reach, not to mention the media that they gather on the Olympics or the X Games or anything like that, it's millions and millions of people. So if we can somehow harness just the social media reach of our Riders Alliance, we're mobilizing millions of people, and that's a true social movement. So really, that's what we're trying to do. We've kind of evolved in a lot of different ways. I think when POW first started, we were telling people to change their light bulbs and carry reusable water bottles, and walk to school, and which is all very good. And by this point, it should be everyone's habit. But that's what we were doing just 5 years ago. And now it's taken on a whole different level. We're working on a lot of big policy issues. We're going into schools to talk to kids about climate change, which we were in a couple schools today with Lucas and Angel, and I think it's one of the most powerful things we can be doing, because teaching kids about climate change and what they can do is where it all starts. And when an athlete goes in to talk to schools, I mean, it's one thing when I go into a school or someone I work with goes in, it's fine. But when someone like Angel or Jeremy or Lucas walks in, or Danny Davis or Gretchen Bleiler, the kids listen and they understand climate change. And climate change is this issue, as you all know, is one of these very hard to grasp things. I mean, obviously you're very close to it living in Jackson, but when you move outside of Jackson, I mean, we're in Southern California, people don't get climate change. And just in the last year or so, because our water's running out, people are starting to get it. But it's not a concept people get very easily. But when you have someone like Lucas or Angel walk in and say, look, this is what I'm seeing in the mountains, and this is why I really need you to take action, the kids listen. And hopefully we're creating a movement of young students. But on the bigger side, mobilizing these athletes on big policy issues is really powerful as well. And when we go to Washington and we talk to lawmakers, they see the power in this. And we've had a couple of wins just recently because we've mobilized athletes. And I think, just to wrap up really quickly, the secret sauce in mobilizing athletes isn't, like Angel said, giving them this script to read from or this thing to do. It's a matter of just telling them what the issue is and saying, look, we want you to take this and package it in your voice and relay it in a way that's most comfortable for you. And if for some reason you don't like policy work, that's okay, we'll move on to the next person. But take this issue of climate change and make it your own and act on it in a way that you feel that you can. And when we work on policy issues, not all of the athletes act the same way, and I think that's the beauty of it. We're kind of attacking the problem in a lot of different directions. So, did that answer the question?
I think he just answered my question.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sorry, I wasn't paying
Yeah.
attention.
Let's all go home.
So that's it for me. Thank you.
I think we're going to try the mics again, because it's hard to hear it in the back. Is that right? Yes. Okay. Can turn up the mic, please? So while he's doing that, now we're going to move on to Sierra Jech. She's a collegiate athlete with the University of Wyoming on the Nordic ski team, and she studies Earth system science and chemistry. Sierra's question is, what can collegiate level ski teams contribute to the climate action social movement?
Oh, do you want the mic?
Hello. So I'm representing the Nordic ski racing community, but more specifically the University of Wyoming Nordic ski club team, which for the past 4 years has led me to understand how incorporating sustainable practices into a team. Hello. I don't know if that's any better. Anyway, incorporating sustainable practices into a team atmosphere is actually possible, and it's really necessary if skiing is going to continue in the future of climate change. The UW team is somewhat unique. We cater to beginning athletes who have never skied before, all the way up to elite skiers. Should I talk normally? Yeah. It's really confusing for me. So that creates a really large team that requires a lot of fundraising. So for the past 4 years, our fundraisers have shifted from not really focused on anything to environmentally and socially justice-oriented fundraisers. For example, we have Trash to Treasures, which incorporates gathering a bunch of items people would normally throw out in the spring, saving it all summer long, cleaning, fixing, and then reselling in the fall to the entire community. That promotes recycling in the community. And then we also have football stadium cleanups. So the University of Wyoming has never had recycling at the football stadiums before. And so by us going in, figuring out a way to do that, we're providing for the community in that way.
So incorporating these types of environmentally friendly fundraisers into our team has allowed us to make sustainability a priority, and I think it should be part of every team from like juniors all the way up. It allows us to create a dialogue about sustainability on a daily basis, which is so important if you're going to change habits and create a lifestyle that's environmentally conscious. Reminds us why we should carpool to practice every day, why we should bike instead of drive, why we should eat locally and less processed foods, stuff like that. So we also have been to international competitions. We've gone to Turkey, Italy, and Slovakia for the World University Games. If you haven't heard about that, it's a lot like the Olympics with different sports competing, but it's for university students. The past year, we were funded by the Hobbs School of Environment and Natural Resources at UW. They're all here. To change that into a course as well, which was an action-based experiential learning course where we did 5 different projects to try to figure out our footprint at an international competition. So one of those projects would be calculating our carbon footprint, which for 15 skiers going from Denver to Slovakia was 27 metric tons, which 87% of that was airplane travel. So, a huge portion of that. And then the next project was based on that. People, the economist major people on our team tried to figure out how much it would cost our team to purchase carbon offsets to offset that amount of emissions. And it's only $325 for that whole trip, which is very tiny in comparison to how much we fundraised for that trip. So when we're talking about how teams can incorporate sustainability, can combat climate change, carbon offsets is a big part of that and should be incorporated into operating budgets every single year. Also, another project in Slovakia, which was the one that I did, was quantifying ski wax accumulation on the ski trails. So we took snow samples, we brought them back to the States, we used gas chromatography mass spectrometry to figure out how much fluorocarbons and hydrocarbons are in the snow. And basically what it comes down to is that you can actually measure that. There are compounds going to the environment, and the next part of that would be figuring out whether those compounds are going into the air, where fluorocarbons can be greenhouse gases, or are they going into the water, where they might influence organisms, and whether CO2, CH4, methane is being produced. So all of those types of things are really important to consider when we're looking at our impact at ski venues. And you can use science, you can use different studies to figure out those different avenues and what we can do to change the structure of ski venues and competition in general. Further outcomes of that course in Slovakia would be understanding that there's environmental impacts of climate change, but also human health impacts. So will we as athletes be able to maintain a high level of training and be able to compete with climate change because of human health impacts? And then also, our team wrote a manuscript directed by Rachel Watson that's going to possibly be published. It's in review right now. We're going to send that manuscript to FISHU, the organizing body for the World University Games, and basically that kind of support for their current efforts for zero emission events, which is a lot about what you talked about, changing events, is really important. As athletes, as you're just saying, we have a lot of power in showing what's valuable to us. And so telling FISHU that we've done this, that it's important to us, is really key. I think that's all I have.
And last but not least, we have Steve Jones, the co-founder and CEO of Teton Gravity Research. And Steve will be discussing why does a company built around fun, adrenaline, adventure lifestyle feel it is appropriate to involve itself in the politics of the environment?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Christian, for putting on the festival, and honored to be here. I kind of, I came up with that question. Hillary Saunders, who works for us, came into our office this summer, and we've been putting out more and more content focused around the environment. We've been working closely with Protect Our Winners since 2007 to really try and spread the word. And it was at first it was a really puzzling question to me, because it was, we've gotten some people going like, hey, keep that stuff out of, we just want to see skiing and snowboarding and fun, and there's no place for the politics of the environment here, and you guys are out of whack. And I just thought it was really puzzling to me that somebody would ask that question. And Hillary had said, how do you answer that question? I'm like, how do you not? I mean, it's like, it's how we live every day. It's for those of us who have this lifestyle, the spiritual connection, the livelihood, everything that we do, and the people that want to see these products come out and get inspired by them and things like that. It's without taking the time and thought to try and preserve that and create awareness around that, where are we going to be in 20 years? How's the guy that's upset that we're talking about this going to consume Teton Gravity Research product, or enjoy things like the snow and the outdoors? And so it was a puzzling question to me, and I think having grown up being impassioned by the outdoors, been in it all my life, it's personally very something that's always been important to me. And when we started TGR, one of our mission statements was that it was going to be to inspire. And, that was kind of a general statement, and it was like inspire people to adventure, to get out there, to, enjoy the magic of wilderness and things like that. And as we've been doing this for the past 20 years, we've seen a lot of change. I remember going to Chamonix when we first started skiing TGR and going down, the Vallée Blanche and almost walking onto the train. And I remember going back there 10 or 12 years later and, having to walk a wooden set of staircase up to get back to the train, and then going back a few years later and they've added onto that wooden staircase. And it's, it's really shocking. So as somebody that we have all of these really influential athletes, we have a really incredible opportunity, with a unique platform that we reach millions and millions of people every month that are coming to our site. And we see the influence that these athletes can have on young kids, and we do try to stay away from being really preachy, and more so, I've heard from everybody here a word that keeps coming up, passion. And it's like, how can we put things out that aren't necessarily cramming them down somebody's throat, but just inadvertently almost and inherently, whether it's showing these beautiful scenics in the wilderness, or people outdoors recreating and enjoying these places, and creating imagery that does touch an emotional chord, to get people more impassioned behind it in a real way, instead of telling them that they have to do that. And so we're really lucky. We're super blessed to have such a large and highly engaged audience, and an opportunity to make a difference and have an influence. And so that's kind of where this whole thing has come from for us. And I think that we are at a crux moment here. We all want to keep enjoying these wonderful places and the things that we're so lucky to get to do, and the more that we can use our platform and our inspiration and our influence to bring other people into that fold, and grow that collective of people that care about it. It's we want that around for our kids and everybody else in years to come. And so it is a really natural topic for us, and I hope the more that we discuss this, everybody's brought up really great points that the people that do ask those questions, like, hey, keep that out of my life, it's like, that's in your life, buddy. Like, there's no, you can't differentiate or separate the two. So that that's kind of our take and where we're going with it right now, and just really trying to use our platform to spread the word and inspire people and get that message out there and get more people on board.
So now we're going to open it up for questions. We have one right away. And please be sure to speak up and try to let the whole room hear without the mic.
Okay. Thank you. I am already inspired. I wonder how you might feel, or other athletes that you know, about having a Get Out the Vote campaign. Because I feel like there is an incredible number of eligible voters in our country who don't vote. Many of them are young. Many of them may need to be inspired by hearing from somebody that they look up to and respect, but also get fired up by. Mm-hmm. And it could be something as easily as just reminding people to register to vote where they live. College students are an excellent example of really knowledgeable, thoughtful people, but who often are disenfranchised from voting because they've moved, they don't know how to register, any number of things. So it could be as simple as just reminding people to vote at the dinner table, to actually, being aware of who are the candidates in your area and who to vote for. And there are groups like League of Conservation Voters or other local groups, and they'll put out where your local candidates stand on issues. And so some athletes might feel as bold to say, I'm voting for so-and-so, for whatever your personal reasons. It really doesn't matter. I just would wish people would vote. I don't care actually who they vote for. So.
Well,
Maybe a little bit.
that would be a great platform for Chris to initiate with, all of us protect our winners athletes, and that he was speaking to the social media power of us as athletes, and I think that's a great example of how I could answer my question a little bit too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was reading something actually this morning that said there were 15 million outdoor enthusiasts that didn't vote 2 years ago, which is a lot. And so we've got to figure out a way to change that in 2016 in a big way. We're running, actually, the Canadian elections are in 2 weeks. And for those of you who don't know, the Canadian national elections are huge in terms of tar sands and exports and all that kind of stuff. And so we're running a campaign right now up in Canada to get people to pledge to vote. And what the theory is, if you pledged, you probably have a higher propensity to go out and vote. And we're getting athletes involved, and our Canadian Runners Alliance people are involved. And it's a much smaller effort than what we could undertake next year, but yeah, I agree, it's a big deal, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, this question's for Chris. You mentioned you had some wins recently from more political engagement by POW, and I was just wondering what some of those wins were.
Yeah, so just...
Sorry, did everyone hear that question? She asked if Chris mentioned that there's been some wins with Protect Our Winters lately and wanted Chris to expand on that.
Sure, so wins in the climate battle are pretty rare because climate change isn't something where you get a direct payoff, as you probably know. So a couple months ago, this amazing piece of legislation came out called the Clean Power Plan, and it's to make a very long story short, it's an opportunity. To make a very long story short, it's basically the EPA is putting emissions restrictions on coal-fired power plants to reduce emissions and therefore take some of the biggest carbon dioxide sources out of the atmosphere. So the Clean Power Plan now is almost law, and it has to get enacted by governors in each state. So the governor of Utah a few months ago said that he wasn't going to do it because Utah, as you probably all know, is a very coal-heavy state, very dependent on fossil fuel, and the governor of Utah said, look, I'm just not going to acknowledge the fact that the Clean Power Plan is happening. So what we did is we mobilized our athletes. A lot of other NGOs did the same thing, but we mobilized our athletes to write op-eds, to contact the governor. We partnered with a group called Ski Utah, which is the trade group for all of the ski resorts in Utah, to leverage their weight and write a letter to the governor. We did a couple of town hall meetings outside of Salt Lake City, up in Park City, to mobilize the community, and we did a big social media outreach with our athletes. And just last week, the governor of Utah said that he was going to support the Clean Power Plan, so which is awesome. And again, we had a very small part in it, but that's kind of what we do is we mobilize people to hopefully have wins like that. So, yeah.
We do that in Wyoming.
We're trying. Wyoming might be tougher.
How come hashtag act on climate?
Yeah. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, I just wanted to mention to speaking to Chris's point. So POW came up with the hashtag Act on Climate, which I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but it went pretty viral. I know League of Conservation Voters uses it now, and so that was a pretty big win, and that's what we used for our social media campaign. And we sort of asked people to repost, make it personal, and hashtag Act on Climate, and it blew up, and that actually caught the attention of the White House, and then they wanted us to come meet with them about it.
Building on that, has there been any success with hashtags or with specific messages of people like in the public space, whether it's celebrities or politicians, that are able to get that much more exposure even beyond the scope of the athletes with a particular initiative or message?
Well, I know the White House used it, right?
Well,
the White
yeah,
House Center of Environmental Quality.
With Act on Climate or just in general?
Yeah, just in general. It just seems like we're mobilized in spaces, which is great, but there's also that next layer of, some celebrity within that really is passionate about snow and about skiing, that has the reach at that next level to connect with people.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we've talked about a lot. We're kind of focused on the athletes, but there probably are a lot of celebrities, especially in places like Jackson and Aspen, who have houses here that really care. We haven't found that person yet who, because, obviously with celebrities, you get a lot of baggage attached to them. So who is that celebrity that you can get behind that's going to represent your brand well, that's obviously really, truly cares about the issue? But we're still looking. Yeah.
There's actually an example in China with Wyoming speaking out against shark fin soup. And I guess that campaign, there was a significant drop in the posh aspect of having shark fin soup at weddings, and so that's been a huge success around celebrities speaking out on a particular issue.
And you've seen like Leonardo DiCaprio and Mark Ruffalo and all those big guys talking about climate, and they're making a huge, a lot of awareness. But I don't know if they're skiers.
So moving forward, do we need people to give up their toys? And if so, how do you do that in a non-preachy way?
Did everybody hear that? Do you want to ask again?
Yeah, I mean, moving forward, if do we need people to give up their toys? And if that's what needs to happen, how do you do that? How do you encourage that process in a non-preachy way?
So go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Angela.
Well, I mean, we get asked that question a lot, being athletes and flying around in helicopters and owning snowmobiles and trucks, and that's a big question that we ask ourselves, and it's like, do you preach that to people? Because that is pretty hypocritical. And so I think what we focus on talking to people about is, obviously all the little things we can do, but also the bigger things like getting politically involved, and sort of looking at other ways you can cut back. If your toys are the things that make you passionate about the outdoors, and that's kind of how you participate. I mean, obviously, like if Lucas and I didn't do, if we didn't go heli ski and get these AK segments, we wouldn't be up here right now. And so we live in a fossil fuel based economy, and like none of us are perfect, and yeah, it's going to be a process of giving up our creature comforts and eventually giving up our toys. But I think the bigger things are, focusing on like the clean power plan is going to do a lot more than if we all, drive our car one day less a week. And so I think start there for now. That's the way I've been going about it anyway. But I'm open to suggestions always.
And I guess you have to wonder, like, when you say give up your toys, like, what toys are we talking about? Because like it's a very slippery slope when we say you have to give up all your toys. Because is it a private jet, or is it a snowmobile, or is it your car that you need to get to work in? So once you kind of go down that road, you got to either go all the way, or you say, okay, well, like Angel just said, like nobody's perfect. We're doing the best we can, and you've got to make sure that you do the best you can. And these guys are classic examples of that. They're spending times in schools, and they're going to Washington. And yeah, they have to spend some time in heli because that's what they do. I drive my car to work. but hopefully I'm doing more good than bad.
But you know, that being said, like I think Jeremy nailed it. He's like you're looking at the best heli skier, snowboarder maybe ever, and he's like, forget that. You can only go so far with that fuel load. Watch me, you know. And like, yeah, it took him way more effort to ride 5 lines in the Wrangles. I was there, you know, like it was a lot of work. But the experience that he gained from those 5 lines, I would fathom to say is a much richer experience than he would have gotten riding 20 lines in a helicopter, which I'm sure he's done. So like that, I think that's what it comes down to is like, we all have to sacrifice. Nobody wants climate change to be real. I wish it wasn't real because I could heli without a conscience.
Well, at some point, yeah.
But
Yeah.
like you have to decide internally, like how much am I willing to compromise to promote what I internally feel needs to be happening. And I think that's something, when I say being preachy, I think that's when you can't tell anybody what that compromise is. It has to be internally motivating it. And so like going to these schools like Angel and I did today and inflicting passion upon these kids, I feel like that passion is what's going to motivate them to make those compromises.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I've gotten that question a bunch before, and you know, one thing, you know, we all have to understand is that we're definitely not perfect, and it's like, are you putting energy towards, you know, personal energy and energy within our company towards evolving and minimizing our footprint and doing things like that. And, you know, we started 5 or 6 years ago working with Protect Our Winters to carbon offset, you know, all of the films that we do now, and we've done that ever since. And that doesn't, you know, completely mitigate it or mean that that's okay. It'd be better to just abstain. But some of those tools we use right now, like we don't necessarily have a replacement for getting these, you know, sweeping cinematic aerials of the Himalaya or Alaska, and you know, those, we feel like those are things that draw more people into the environment. They do serve to inspire people. They do have the ability to touch that emotional chord, and so it's, you know, it's this push and pull between like your personal morality and what you can do, and you know, you're always, you know, inherently as a human, you're looking for ways to justify, like, well, I can do this because of that. And so I don't think it's a cut and dry answer. It's something that, you know, needs continued evaluation and thought. And you know, like somebody here mentioned, Chris or somebody, just, you know, hopefully the you know, clean energies and things like that continue to evolve and get better. And the technologies, but it's a tricky one, and you know, what we do is just we try to do different things to offset that and minimize it, and continue to try to progress as a company and minimize our footprint. But are we going to stop using helis tomorrow? No, we're not, you know, but we're thinking about it. We're thinking about different ways to get better.
And that's where we rely on the intelligent humans of the world to come up with the drone that works a little better. These guys would be using a battery-powered drone if they could get the same shots they could get out of the heli. And the more we promote those sort of technologies, you know, being developed, I think it's going to make it easier for, you know, Steve to fly around and get 6 shots.
I would just add to that 2 things. First, you don't have to give up those toys, but you can incorporate carbon offsets for what you've been doing, and just make that part of, you know, the operating budget, basically. The second thing is it may come down to needing to change competition structure or competition style, basically. So for Nordic skiing, you know, high-level World Cup races happen in different countries throughout the entire season. Is that necessary? Is that air travel necessary? Is there a way that we can restructure competition? I can't speak for other types of snow sports, but I'm sure there's ways that we can think about that, so we don't have to give up, you know, our toys.
Hi, my name's Phil Dufelt. I'm the director of Snow Riders International. Thank you for all the work that you guys do. It's amazing. We're a group that also works with skiers and boarders to protect the environment broadly, mountain environment, so naturally climate change is part of that. And you know, part of what you're doing, I think, that is so incredible is like people's stories And the story that we tell, our personal stories, are just so powerful when we're relating to others about climate change and spreading the message. And on that same note, I'd love to know, for each of you, with your personal story, what was the first moment or situation that got you inspired about the environment or climate change?
Well, I grew up at Snowbird Ski Resort. Yeah. So, Jackson's cool too. But I grew up at Snowbird. And I see for the past 20 years, I've seen what it's like. And I don't really remember the first maybe 2 or 3 or 4, but I've really watched the snowfall decrease, and I've watched the seasons change quite a bit. And it's, for some reason, it just really frustrated me. One, because I remember what the POW days used to be like, and they used to happen all the time, and that's one of my happiest moments, probably lots of our happiest moments. And it was just this frustration. And then that also led to, we're a watershed. So we started seeing drought right away when we started getting less snowfall in the watersheds, and then that we had a couple years of really bad forest fires. All the West is seeing it now, but it all of a sudden, I just got really frustrated as a little kid, and or I don't know, young teenager, I guess. And that was my moment. It was from seeing my home change.
I had no significant struck by lightning moment.
Yeah.
It's just an acute. Like I said, I've been super fortunate to get to travel around the world and see snow on almost every continent now, and I think it was just this accumulative knowledge and experience that kind of all came together. And just a few years ago, I got involved with POW, and say it's been a several-year process of wrapping my head around, and I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon.
For me, it was 2 things. I grew up on the East Coast, and the ski area that I grew up at skiing just outside New York City is no longer, because they just don't get snow anymore. So that was kind of a wake-up call to me, and every time I go home for Christmas, I see this place, and it's overgrown and it's closed. So I have 2 little kids, and I think the thing that struck it with me is that I want my kids to have the same experiences that I did when I was their age. And I want to be able to tell them that I did everything I could to fix that. So that was the one thing. But the second thing was when I had a conversation with Jeremy. And it was kind of happening at the same time, because I realized that I really wanted to do something and make sure that my kids had the same experiences that I did. And then I talked to Jeremy, and he was so passionate and spoke with such conviction about doing something about this that I just couldn't say no. So that was for me.
I guess mine would be listening to Keegan Randall and other major Nordic athletes at junior nationals events. So as a little freshman in high school, listening to those people who have seen it firsthand and getting inspired by them.
It's tough to pinpoint. I think, in high school I was reading a lot of Edward Abbey books and things like that, and so I was thinking about it, a lot, maybe not seeing it so much. And probably the most pivotal moment for me, I think I was like 19, and the came out on the front page of the newspaper that there was a hole in the ozone layer, and that one hurt.
Good question, though.
Yeah.
Brett Lorenzen from Environmental Working Group. I'm coming at this from the other angle. I'm the paid environmentalist who has the amateur sponsored sports athlete. And my thing is fish, and trout in particular. A lot of what I'm hearing here seems to be centered on protecting snow so that you can ski. But in the Midwest, a lot of the resorts that don't get snow are now putting in high capacity well permits to make snow all winter, drawing down steelhead streams during breeding season. All the fishermen hate the skiers now. In Idaho, we're fighting battles against dams that need to come out that provide the water and the electricity for the ski resorts to run. As people at the top of the industry who can affect the CEOs of the industry, what do you feel is your obligation to kind of realize that global climate change in particular is across all sports and all areas of the environment? And how do you keep your interests, which admittedly are top of the hill, literally. How do you keep those in perspective while realizing everything you do to benefit yourselves is probably going to hurt somebody in the valley? And how do you get the industry to respond, in particular with your star power?
I would argue that everything we do is a negative effect. There's a lot, with the help of Jeremy, there's a huge push amongst snowboarding. We've never been backcountry adventurers. Jeremy changed that. So you have this user group. I mean, we're still talking, the point whatever percentiles of users, but we have this user group that is now experiencing snowboarding completely carbon free, except for the products they're using, created wherever they've been created. And I think that has been extremely helpful. It's really hard. I don't know exactly how to engage with the CEOs. A lot of them, these are big businesses that you're talking about. These are not the North Face marketing team, which I'm connected with, And you asking the same question I'm asking.
Well, and something to consider is like Aspen runs its entire ski resort off of methane emissions from a nearby coal mine, right? And then Whistler has a hydroelectric plant right next to it, and that's a dam. But I think that powers its entire ski resort. I think there's creative solutions, and I think it's really important to have conversations amongst each other, because I'm friends with lots of fishermen, and I think it's important where we have gatherings or get, not that I'm trying to preach what my question was about, but ways that we can talk to each other, because as sort of people who enjoy the same place, like in Jackson, you've got your snowmobilers, you got your ranchers. I know Shift has principles of conservation guidelines. And basically, that's the whole idea, is to find ways that we can all continue getting what we want out of it, and we're going to have to be creative. We're going to have to not be afraid to talk to each other and not, get our feelings hurt, because we all just want to keep doing what we love. So.
Can I add one quick thing? I think we've never been about skiers and snowboarders saving their powder days. That's a very dangerous place for us to live. And so, powder days are just an illustration of what we care about. So, we're doing it because of places like Jackson, because our jobs depend on it when it snows. To us, snow is currency to us. So when it doesn't snow, we're all in trouble, as you all know. But I think conversations like this are really good, because we're fly fishermen, we're mountain bikers, we're all the same. But maybe to our fault, these frontline communities like yours and ours are living in a little bubble, and we don't have conversations like this. To your point, we've got to start thinking, hey, look, I'm a fly fisherman too. I just happen to be more involved in this, but we should be talking more openly about this, because ski resorts should understand. Maybe, they do.
Oops, sorry. I was just going to add, the principles of conservation is online, right, on the Shift thing. So you can all check it out.
Can I add more?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. So I just wanted to add that communication and collaboration is extremely important when it comes to all this, especially because you're talking about fish. But if you take out fish, you remove nutrients, you remove cycling of nutrients, you make the stream basically inert. So we need to realize the impacts of that on the local community, not just that community, but downstream communities. There's a lot more than just the fishing and the...
It's just healthy ecosystems all around. Yeah.
To the tune of ski resorts, I know that a lot of the summer skiing has had a huge visual impact. The Palmer snowfield's almost gone. I know that Whistler is implementing snow guides for next year to try and save their glacier. What are your guys' thoughts on implementing snow guns to save glacier? Is that kind of a quick fix? Or?
So for everyone else, essentially the impact summer recreation opportunities at ski resorts. Is that the question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a scientist, but I don't think that that's really a solution, personally. It is a quick fix, and it's just, the amount of energy and everything going into doing that is to me personally, very clearly not a solution, actually a negative impact.
Yeah, I think a lot of the ski resorts a lot of them are really feeling the heat, and they're trying to figure out how they're going to stay. Yeah, they're really trying to figure out how they're going to stay in business. And I don't fault them for that, because they've got a business to run. I don't agree with the idea, but I think a lot of them are trying to figure out, well, God, if we're not going to get the business in the winter, how are we going to do it in the summer? And we've seen some crazy ideas at some resorts lately, and that could be one of them. Yeah.
Start with you on the end. Yeah.
Jamie Shepard, Mountain Riders Alliance. I work with smaller skiers to help them be sustainable. And I recently finished up a stint in northern Wyoming, it's a great state. And about 2 months ago, when that clean energy bill came through, overnight I went from speaking about climate change and environmental stewardship to hearing on the radio that the current administration is putting us out of business and we're trying to keep the lights on. And it became a non-starter overnight, where I was no longer welcome to speak about, I didn't say climate change, I changed to drought. So any suggestions or advice for, dare I say, the good old boys to start a conversation that isn't so alienated out of the gate?
Can't argue with stupidity, Matt. Never get anywhere.
I don't know, I mean, you know, to me, like, we find a lot of that, you know, when we go to Capitol Hill, we talk to a lot of hardcore Republican or denier Democrats that just don't understand. But, you know, again, we can't be preachy about it. They just have a different perspective. And we've got to find a way to find the common ground with them. In a lot of ways, you know, fighting climate change is a moral issue. It's something we need to care about. They care about taking care of the environment, and so do we. And you know, it's like, how do we figure out how we find a common ground? And just a very quick story, we were in Senator Murkowski's office, who is the senator from Alaska. Very hardcore oil state, very nice woman, and she came in the office, in the room, and we were all sitting around the table, and we were expecting a very short meeting, you know, big disagreement, because she's never met us before when we've tried 2 other times. And she walked in the room, and she said, look, you guys, I understand what you're saying, and I get it. And she goes, I'm a skier too, and I love the snow. And in fact, my nephew runs a ski film company called Sweetgrass. And all of a sudden, we were like, wow, we have some common ground with this woman who we thought we were going to get in a fist fight with. And so it was, you know, like this, the sport that we love it levels the playing field in lots of cases. That may be a little bit different than what you were asking, but like, there's some common ground somewhere, I think.
Yeah, I think also changing the wordage I find can really help when you're talking with people. Like, I don't really always say I'm an I don't use the word climate change very often. A lot of times I'll talk about something different. Like in Utah, you know, we've got really bad air quality, and that's something everyone cares about. We're having major lung problems, and people's asthma are going up. And so if you find something that is a mutual concern, you know, maybe it's whatever it is in that area. Like, try and find that. Like, pollution is a big one, or trash. Like, there's always something. Pollution, no one likes pollution, especially in Utah. That's something people really get behind because we see it easily. And we all agree that if there's a way to clean up the air that we're breathing, that's a good thing. And I don't know, I just encourage changing the wordage a little bit, and just then it doesn't turn people off so quickly.
Don't call them stupid.
And don't call them stupid.
Bring them beer.
Yeah, free beer.
That is a good point, though, because that is one of the hardest things we face, for sure.
So the athletes and ambassadors and organizations like PAL doing great things for climate change and policy, and influencing middle schools and telling kids about how to change their daily activities to contribute to that. But the riding community, most of us go to these ski areas, we get stoked on seeing you ride helis and ride PAL, and then we go to the ski area. So how do you think ambassadors can also influence the community's travel decisions to support skiers that are trying to preserve that culture for future generations?
Say that last sentence again.
So how do you think that ambassadors can influence the riding community to make ski travel decisions that preserve the culture for future generations?
Sounds like a great project. Yeah, well, I mean, there's obviously like certain resorts that are trying to do good things, but maybe coming out with a more sustainable way of traveling, or of we can be using this sport, I guess.
Well, one thing you could do is just looking at resorts that do have high environmental ratings, and trying to start to make more decisions based off of that.
Take your events to those resorts when the other resorts ask why you didn't go there. Plain and simple.
And you know, you don't have to go to resorts either. You know, I mean, Jeremy has said over and over, like, the best riding he finds is at his back door. And now he's not, I mean, a lot of us don't live where he lives, but, you know, like, you know, you don't have to travel to find really good riding, I bet. You know, I don't know where you live, but.
Yeah, but even, like, the reason why I ask is, so I'm from Stoke Certified. It's a sustainability certification program for ski areas. And we try and work with resorts that do care about these things. And not necessarily traveling really far, but in your backyard so that I can go and ride a lift if I don't have the training and equipment to go into the backcountry, you know what I mean? Supporting those ski areas.
As a professional snowboarder, and I've traveled quite a bit, I've heard, other than Aspen that she was talking about in this video I saw about Whistler with their own hydroelectric dam that supports their, offsets their carbon.
Wolf Creek?
So this is all new information to me, and I feel like I'm pretty well immersed in the industry. This is the, you know, maybe I'm not looking in the right places, but maybe that information isn't being promoted in the right way.
Give it over.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. I like that suggestion. Yeah.
So we have time for 2 more questions.
I feel like the kind of overarching element of this is sort of like a helplessness, and I think that we look to the sort of torchbearers of our community, you guys, as it were, at this moment, to sort of like lead us into the light. And I'm curious if you have suggestions for just everyday stuff, or areas like, for me, I work in social media, and that's an area that I find that when I try to be proactive, people just don't respond. But when you want to post like photos of someone's ass, then it's like, and then likes. You know, so like, what are some tools that you have in your toolbox to engage, especially Angela and Lucas, like, because you, I'm sure, are active in that area. Like, how do you engage people without seeming like a kook?
It's really hard. Yeah, it's like if I just post something and I'm like, hey, come out and support this event, or come, you know, vote for this person. It's really hard. People kind of want to skip it. Yeah, it's not as interesting as ass shots, for sure. Of course it's not. So then maybe post an ass shot with that caption. But, no, I do. I try and find interesting photos that people want to know more about, and I try and be really subtle. I think subtlety is key, and that's what I've found is my biggest tool is kind of like finding ways to sneak it in there, so you're not just like shoving things down people's throats and being a billboard for, you know, your cause. Because then, I mean, I have friends on Facebook who all they do is post about their political view or cool things, you know, cool cause, but it's always the same, and I don't read what they say anymore. So finding, yeah, just.
Well, it's tricky because I do feel like we're so helpless in the general.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of you people are involved in the environmental movement, and then there's people like me who I'm not really, but I want to participate, and I recycle as method. Well, Jackson is, that's a whole other story. But like, you know, like, I participate and I like encourage, and I ride my bike, and I do this. But like, how can we? Where are our tools? Like, where do they live, and how can you help us get them?
Well, okay.
Oh, go ahead.
No, sorry if I'm talking too much. I was just saying, you know, like, there's a lot of really good stuff going on, and you should never get demoralized about climate change. It's not as bad as you think. And there's the clean energy that's here, that's affordable. The better stuff that's around the corner is literally right around the corner. So there's a conference in Paris in December that will literally be the tipping point if it goes the right way, and we hope it will, for really huge progress on climate. So you don't need to leave here thinking that this is a lost cause, because it absolutely is not. But what you need is the right information to spread to your friends. And I'll be self-serving here, but like, join us, because it doesn't cost anything.
Protect our winners.
Or join snow riders, or join mountain riders. I mean, like, join these organizations that will give you the right information, because you can go on the web and get very confused. But if you join an organization that you trust, or Citizens Climate Lobby, they'll give you the tools to take the action that you need to take.
Mm-hmm. And this is a personal tip, because I went from being in environmental studies to flying around in helicopters the next year, you know. And so I made the choice to drop out of school, where I was learning about all the bad things that you can do in the environment, how you should stop, to doing all those things that I was learning about how bad they were, right? And so that was a really big moral dilemma. And I was like, how can I change the world still? Like, what's my new path? And this is just a really short personal tidbit, but What I realize is that when we feel safe, and when we feel hopeful, and when we feel joyful and loved, that's when you want to make a change. That's when you want to start reaching out and kind of getting out of your bubble, because you're like, oh yeah, I feel good about myself, or this is a good day. You want to start doing different things. And so I resolved that my mission would be at least every day to try and make somebody's day better. And I think collectively, if we all did, whether it's like buying a coffee for the person behind you, or just small things where you just try and make somebody feel better about themselves, that goes a long way. And I've really seen it work a tremendous way. So don't forget of the power of like making each other feel good. It's really important. So.
And one last thing in reference, you said you're in social media. The best tip that I've gotten, well, we're all in social media. It's not just you. The best tip that I've gotten is that you cannot go wrong being true to yourself. And that doesn't mean that you need to tell everyone and that you know what's on your mind at every point of the day. But if your posts are authentic to your person, or for me, it's my brand that I've created around my person, even if it's not the most you cannot go wrong being true and authentic to yourself. And if people are going to bag on it, then they're going to bag on it. But you will, giving out those authentic tidbits, you will connect with a lesser amount of people in a really good way. And I think that's really helpful.
Do we have one last question?
If everybody in the world was listening right now and all your dreams for climate action came true, what would that look like?
Rainbows and unicorns.
That's a good buzzer.
Yeah.
I personally have no idea.
All of our dreams about climate change came true. So not nightmares, but true.
If we could really do it and really get our winters back and really change the course of the future for the planet Earth, what would that take?
That would take dropping fossil fuel, every drop of it, like today. But it's possible. I mean, it's possible because solar and wind are here and everything else. But it would take getting off of fossil fuel within the next couple of years, for sure. For me.
I agree.
There's a lot of pretty inspiring things that we see in our travels of people that are doing great things. Even from the transportation systems in Japan. I mean, it's all run on magnets. Why is there not a bullet train from Vancouver to LA stopping in every major city on the West Coast? You could do the whole thing in less than a day. It'd be unbelievable. For me, seeing things like that would be amazing.
Yeah, I'd probably just like to see everybody, if you could get everybody in the world to take it seriously, be at least even a little bit impassioned by it, then I'm super confident that, if everybody was 100% on the same team, really thought what we think is happening and is going to happen was real, that would make a massive difference.
Well, thank you everybody for being here. Let's do a round of applause for our panelists.